Okay, so before we get started, I realized I forgot to say a bunch of important stuff, so here's me going over all that before the original recording. Firstly, regarding spoilers, I try to make the beginning of my commentary for each series as vague and spoiler-free as possible, so if you just want to check out some series, watch the beginning parts of each top 10, then once I get into actual plot details, I'll put up a timestamp that you can skip to if you want to go in spoiler-free. I do put up some random out-of-context panels and GIFs here and there, but those shouldn't hinder anyone's experience. There are also no manga spoilers except for 3 series, which again I'll indicate using timestamps, so if you're an anime only, don't worry about getting spoiled for the manga content. Secondly, my mic quality is a little bit inconsistent at times, so apologies for that. This honestly took a long ass time to record and edit, much longer than what I originally expected. But yeah, hopefully you find my commentary insightful and pick up some new series. Here's the original audio. Alright, so after hundreds of series and nearly 5,000 hours spent, I've decided to make a top 10 favorite series video and compile my thoughts all in one place. Obvious disclaimer, this is all my opinion, my personal enjoyment. There's no such thing as objectivity. If your favorite series is not on the list, I don't know, I probably like it, but I might also dislike it. If that's the case, that's too fucking bad, I guess. And worst adaptations / source material will not bring down the ranking, they can only help. Before we start, just want to say that personally, as someone who's been active in the anime community for a very long time, reviews that essentially boil down to air quotes, good characters, interesting plot, great animation, great soundtrack, great cinematography, great directing, or whatever the fuck, that's just so boring to me. Obviously, a show that someone likes will have those traits. What I really want to know is what's unique about the show and like what about it is appealing to you or the most appealing to you as a person, right? That's what I'm interested about. So hopefully I'm able to convey those points well, but do keep in mind that none of this is scripted. Literally all I have to go off of are random GIFs or like panels or something that I think represent the series, and I'll just use those as talking points. But yeah, don't expect me to sound like Giguk or Mother's Basement, but I will try my best. There will be spoilers because let's be honest, like I need to talk about spoilers if I want to really talk about why a series is good, and so I will put timestamps in the description down below so you can skip around if you do want to go in completely blind. And another thing, I'm not going to include movies in this because movies are only 2 hours, series are like 4 hours, 8 hours, 16 hours, 200 hours, right? So there's like literally so much more time for character development and plot progression in regular TV series compared to movies. So I will not be including movies because of that. But if I were to include movies, the only movie that would even be contending for the top 10 spot would be Perfect Blue. That is my favorite movie, I love it, but yeah, that's the only movie that I would even consider putting in the top 10. Alright, enough talking, top 10 series, here we go. Alright, number 10, Girls House Tour, or Shoujo Shimatsu Roko in Japanese. And here's the anime and here's the manga. Basically what this series is about is there's these 2 girls in a post-apocalyptic setting, as in it's literally a world where there's only these 2 characters. Okay, later on they do meet like a couple more characters, but throughout the majority of the series it's basically these 2 girls vibing in this world where there's literally no people and there's only buildings, and like there are other life forms like these weird robots, but yeah, these 2 are mostly the only living things in this world, and it's just like such a unique series, as in okay, I'll go into 3 aspects. So firstly, it would be the dialogue, as in like the series isn't fueled by interesting plot points, it's mostly fueled by the dialogue of these 2 main characters, 2 girls, Chito and Yuri, and their journey throughout this post-apocalyptic world. And most of the content are literally just them 2 talking, and it's not even like complex dialogue or something. They talk like elementary schoolers. So Chito is pretty knowledgeable, but Yuri is definitely like elementary school level knowledge. And do keep in mind that like both of these girls are not like well versed in like literature or science, because from the time period they come in, they basically have no knowledge of what we would consider common sense. So they do not even know like what robots are. They don't know what cell phones are. Like those things are like mysteries to them, and as they journey throughout, they learn this new kind of civilization. Yeah, that's like a side thing, but what I want to say is that the dialogue between these 2 characters are really simple but also endearing in a way. As in, their dialogue doesn't seem fabricated. A lot of time it doesn't serve a purpose, but it still subtly develops each character and with their own nuance. Most of the series is fueled by the dialogue, and it's really good. They just talk to each other like they're friends, and you know, I feel like a lot of times dialogue in anime or manga feel really like generated, as in they always have to serve some sort of purpose, or they're just not interesting, as in they're super generic. But yeah, the dialogue they have is very real, and like I said before, like most of the dialogue they have is very elementary, but they do have a lot of philosophical stuff, as in they contemplate the meaning of life and like what literature is and what values it has. But because of the heavy contrast between what I said before, like simple stuff and this kind of heavy weighty stuff, and there's really big contrast, there's a stark contrast between those two, so they even like pop off more, but at the same time they're not emphasized. It's like a passing dialogue that if you actually think about it, it has a lot of meaning and a lot of depth, but you don't really realize it until you actually think about what's happening. Like if you literally just turn off your brain and watch or read the series, and you're gonna be like, oh yeah, they're just talking, right? But if you actually think about what they're talking and what kind of circumstances they're going through, as these two like middle schoolers, or actually they might be like 18 or something, but these two girls, right, alone in the world, and their dialogue, it's just like really captivating. I think you kind of have to like experience the series to understand. But yeah, the dialogue is really good. If you're a big dialogue fan, as in you just like a lot of slice of life dialogue style, not like Monogatari-esque like heavy dialogue, but more of just chill vibes, then on that aspect this series is really good. The second point I wanted to mention was the adventure like vibe the series gives, but it's not like adventure in the sense of like a hero's journey, right? It's not like, oh yeah, there's these cool monsters or these cool fairies in this cool kingdom or whatever. It's more realistic than that. It's not like a fairy tale. It feels really surreal, but at the same time it feels like these places can actually exist, right? And I think I compare it personally to like you and your friend going to some underground construction site where there's no one there. It's just like a sort of a magical moment of you and your friends just chilling and just enjoying life, right? But it's kind of like that feeling, but amplified 10 times more, because you're just sitting there and like you're reading these two girls having an adventure, and the places they visit aren't like crazy stuff, right? But they're like super well thought out, as in like the buildings and the architecture and everything, they just feel like so real, and they breathe life into the drawings. And I think I really just have to talk about the manga, because the manga is where the art is amazing. Anime is still good, but the manga captures it way better. So this is my third point, the art. And I'm just gonna put some like random panels up here and then change them once in a while, but just like look at the first one, look at these lights. It's like these two girls, and I think the one on the leftmost is another dude they meet temporarily for like a couple chapters, but they're talking about lights. It's not anything fancy, like it's not like this is some utopia or something, right? They're just lights on top of buildings, but the way they phrase the dialogue combined with the art style and how they present their like double spreads, right? They just have this magical feeling of, wow, look at this exists. And it's just wonderful, right? It's hard for me to put into words because these are feelings that I literally get while I'm reading or watching the series. But yeah, I think if you've seen the series or read it, yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people share. And just kind of scroll through more double spread. Like, look at this one. Literally only 2 dialogue panels. Maybe life means something that has an end. And then the other girl responds with, yeah. Like, this is super simple dialogue. It's not fucking like Socrates philosophical theory, right? It's literally just talking about maybe this is what life is, but coupled with the context of the situation and the art, it just gives this emphasis on the whole thing. But at the same time, it's not that emphasized, it's really subtle. So it might seem like I'm contradicting myself here, but these two factors, or the aspects that I talked about, merge really well with each other to the point where they just create this perfect balance of like this magical feeling to the readers. I keep repeating that, but that's literally how I felt while I was experiencing this series. And just look at the third one. I feel so relaxed. Again, another simple dialogue, but that just enhances the feeling of the spread way more. Aesthetically, looking at this spread, amazing. It has so much detail, so much architecture. I love architecture in manga. It has by far one of the best architecture I've ever seen. The way the buildings look and the perspective of this, it's like a fish lens perspective where you can kind of see everything curved, but just look at the depth and the reality of this building. It just looks so cool. And the person in the parachute is another girl that they meet, but this is one of her dreams of being able to fly, right? Because she wants to kind of like escape this place.
So she's just enjoying the view and being like, yeah, even though she didn't like achieve her goal of being able to fly for a long duration of time, and look at the art, such perfect combination. And the series is full of moments like this where every double spread is a lot of times paired with a dialogue. Well, this is an example of one that's not paired with dialogue. If I had to summarize my feelings about the series concisely, it's really genuine, as in their dialogue is really genuine and you really feel connected to these girls and what they're experiencing. And it can be incredibly relaxing, but also very thought-provoking. And it's this perfect balance that I feel like a lot of slice of life series lack, as in they can get really boring and stale sometimes, but Girls House Tour are amazing. They utilize their settings very, very well. And they create these powerful messages using the art and the landscape and their setting to, it doesn't have to be like complex message or themes, but these are things that everyone wonders about, right? Like, what is the meaning of life? Everyone thinks about that, right? But they convey these relatable themes through very, very simple but also majestic way. I think that's a pretty good way to put it. Yeah, so yeah, those are my general thoughts on Girls House Tour. I think it's almost impossible to fully explain why I love the series with words, because of like half the reason why I like the series comes from, just inexplicable feelings that I get when I read the series or watch the series. So yeah, I would just, if you're listening to this, I would just really recommend that you sit down and watch it or read it, whichever is your preference. And speaking of that, I will say that the manga I feel like is far better than the anime. The anime is still really good, has really strong production and soundtrack, and it does surprisingly capture this magical vibe that I talked about so much for the past like 10 minutes. Which I thought, because I read it first before watching, so I thought it would be almost impossible to capture a vibe, but White Fox does do a pretty good job at capturing that vibe. But yeah, the original, just if you judge from the 5 or 6 spreads that I have put in this individual on the screen right now, then you can tell that the art, one of the best, insanely high quality with a lot of detail. And I don't know, I'm personally someone who prefers anime over manga in general, but this one I would definitely recommend the manga just because of the art. And secondly, the anime only covers 4 out of the 6 volumes. The pacing is a little bit slow, considering how it can feel that way, because not that much things happen like plot wise for each chapter, and they only cover 4 volumes in 12 episodes, right? Considering it was a seasonal, right? So what I would have actually loved to see is maybe it could have been like 15 or 16 episodes or 14 even, and then make it a little bit faster paced so that they cover the entire content within one season. And my personal favorite volumes in the series are 5 and 6, so they literally did not cover my favorite part of the series. So, and it's, in my opinion, never gonna be adapted because the manga ended after the anime aired and it's only 2 volumes left. The only things they can do is either put out an OVA, which is highly unlikely, or a movie, which is also unlikely because the anime is primarily for the advertisement of the manga, right? Yeah, the anime will probably never get a continuation. It still ends off in a decent spot, but the manga ending is phenomenal. Manga readers out there, you know what I'm talking about, has an amazing ending. Yeah, I'm not gonna go into spoilers for all the anime onlys out there, but yeah, just the final chapter, one of the best I've ever read. Insanely good, just perfectly captures why I love this series. So if you've been an anime only waiting for a season 2 to drop, it's not gonna happen. Just go ahead and read the manga. And if you're someone new wanting to experience the series, I would recommend that you just start with the manga. But yeah, that was Girls House Tour.
Okay, number 9, Barakamon. So I'll just preface it right now and say that Barakamon is a show that I did not think I would like. I thought it'd be boring, with slice of life, episodic, something that's definitely not my taste at the time and still not my taste. I still don't think episodic series are that good for me, but obviously it's number 9 in my top 10, so I loved it. I finished in 2 days. It was amazing. So with that being said, Barakamon is a series about a dude who's a calligrapher. So firstly, calligraphy is not something that you see every day, right? It's a calligrapher who's selfish, hot-headed, and he's really impulsive. And he goes to this exhibit. The old judge there, he's like a boomer judge, he's like, yeah, your art sucks and it's generic. And then main character gets mad at him, punches him, and then he gets sent to a fucking island. So that's basically the premise. And in the island, he meets a lot of villagers and he starts to change himself. And I'll say that if you are a slice of life fan, then You are going to absolutely love the series. It's very wholesome, it's cute, it's funny. It's basically anything that you'd want in a slice of life, but I want to orient my commentary around the people that are not fans of slice of life. Barakamon really changed my perception on the slice of life genre. To demonstrate that, I want to kind of talk about two different aspects of the show that really makes me attached to Barakamon. So firstly, Honda's development. So Honda, as he starts out in the series, he's obviously very talented and he's really hardworking, right? He's a successful calligrapher. He's by no means an average calligrapher or someone that's struggling or someone that thinks that he can't achieve anything. It's definitely not like that. He's an accomplished calligrapher, but he doesn't understand his own true calligraphy style yet, because he from a young age was trained to have this certain style, and basically his calligraphy reads off like a textbook style. So it's very generic, it's very, I guess you can say, computer generated, as in it's very precise but it lacks any personal flavor. Like his style as a calligrapher does not show through his calligraphy at all. And basically over the episodes, as Honda interacts with the villagers, he just learns to find his own style, and that's like by far my favorite aspect of the series. And it's not only that, but he also improves as a person, right? At first he finds Naru annoying, he finds Hina annoying, he finds all the children annoying, but even by the end of the first episode, which I have to say is one of the best first episodes I've ever seen, and in fact I will go here and say that Barakamon episode 1 is my second favorite first episode, besides my number 1's favorite episode, which we'll get into later. But anyway, in the first episode, he arrives in the village, and then by the end he's like all depressed, right? And then Naru comes in and then she says, "You ain't gonna know unless you climb up yourself. Ain't no way to look if you don't try." Like, this is the kind of shit I love. This inspirational, such a passionate vibe. And Naru's interactions with Honda are some of the best I've ever seen. It's very wholesome, it's very genuine, very endearing. It makes you want to root for Honda as a character. After episode 1, it's all uphill from there. And in the ocean episode, where Honda like tears up a little bit because he was worried about the villagers, and that just shows how quickly he was able to be acclimated with the villagers. And the episode where he talks with Kanzaki and he tells him that Honda should go back to Tokyo because that's where his calligraphy can truly flourish. And what does Honda respond? He says that he really wants to try. He wants to give his life a new shot. He wants to build a new chapter of his life. And that kind of turning point for his character is so inspiring. And the conclusion, just amazing conclusion. So when Honda comes back to the village after, participating in the new art exhibit, everyone's like, "Yeah, what place did you get?" And then Honda doesn't outright tell him what he got, but at the end he reveals that he got like 4th or 5th, right? It's definitely not something that is good for his standards, but he doesn't look depressed about it. He looks pretty optimistic because the piece that he submitted was something that meant a lot to him. It showed his unique and distinct style. It was like a bunch of stones together, and that like represented the village, because the earlier episode showed him and like Naru's grandpa, kind of building this stone dam wall, and then the piece that he submitted is like a calligraphy representation of his feelings for the village. And he's not depressed about it, which is a stark contrast to the beginning of the series. And with just 12 episodes, you're able to build this character from scratch and just perfectly develop him. Nothing felt out of place, very perfectly paced. Like, Barakamon does something that a series with 200 episodes cannot do. This kind of short, concise development is extremely hard to do. And as I mentioned before, which is the number 1 reason why I do not think movies are as good as series, or nearly as good, because of lack of screen time. But with just 4 hours, Barakamon, amazing development. And I'll repeat it again, it's a story about finding your true passion through calligraphy. The show isn't about calligraphy, it's a story told through calligraphy. I think there's a big difference, right? It's not like the show is about like learning how to write calligraphy. Calligraphy is just a method for the protagonist to develop, and Barakamon does a wonderful job in doing this. Okay, I think I talked enough about the development aspect, so I'll go into my second point, which is Naru as a character. Naru is this yellow-haired kid who's like freaking 2 feet tall, but super funny and cute and just very lovable. But the main thing that makes Naru stand out to me is the way she acts and how realistic it is as a real kid. The Naru is simply the best portrayal of a kid I've ever seen in an anime, and even in like media in general. Like in anime, you have these like lollies, right? And they're like super high-pitched voice, just like kind of annoying. They're like, they do cute stuff for the sake of doing cute stuff, and that I'm not really a fan of that. I don't find that stuff cute. I don't find that stuff entertaining. But Naru is literally acts like a genuine kid. Like, she doesn't do stuff to try to be a kid. She does stuff because she is a kid, and you can clearly see that distinction when you watch her during the show. And this goes for all the other village kids, right? But I'm just picking Naru because I feel like she's the most prominent character besides Honda by far. And yeah, Naru, just such an endearing character. I think she's my favorite female character by far. Just a very pure substance. I love her. Another thing I'll add on about Naru is that her voice actor is actually, when she voiced the series, she was like 9 or 12 or something. So they got a legitimate child voice actor to voice her, and she just sounds very real. Like, this is by far one of the best voice actings I've ever heard. I'm so used to these high-pitched lolly voices, right? Voiced for like 7-year-old grandmas. So this kind of voice is so refreshing to me, and it really adds a lot to the character. It just adds this like pure vibe to her. And while on the topic of sounds, I'll also say that the opening is very good. Not only the song itself, but the visuals. I usually do not care about visuals at all for openings, but this one is really good. It basically shows the story of the first episode in a very concise format, and the story of the first episode is, in short, the story of the entire series. Oh yeah, another thing that I briefly wanted to talk about regarding Naru is my favorite episode and my favorite moment in the series, which is episode 8, where Naru goes to the festival with Honda, and the entire episode is very peaceful, but at the end you just have this standalone moment between Naru and Sensei, and Naru looks fairly dejected, but she looks at Honda and then she immediately cheers up, and Honda's thinking even someone like Naru, who's so energetic all the time, can have tough times, because Naru is most likely an orphan. She lives with her grandpa, so you can just tell how, you know, even though she might not look like it, she can be pretty depressed at times. You gotta consider that she's a kid, right? And Honda's just having this realization, and then Naru comes up to Honda and says, I'm not feeling very lonely, maybe because you're here, Sensei, right? And that's like such a touching moment that tells volumes about Honda's role as a mentor to Naru, and how her words affect Honda. Like, imagine how proud he feels. He went from someone that despised the country to someone who can act as a father figure to a girl who's an orphan, right? And all of this is not emphasized from the beginning, but because of all the episodes in the beginning that subtly develop each character, and we get to know the dynamics, the later emotional moments hit way harder, because you know these characters, you know how these characters interact, you know how these characters think. And that moment also kind of like demonstrates Naru's surprising maturity and her awareness of her surroundings. So yeah, Barakamon, an amazing show. It's something that, as I said before, that changed my perception on the entire genre. It has a serene setting that allows the protagonist to fully develop in such a short period of time. And I'll briefly talk about the manga. The manga, it has 3 times as much more content as the anime, but there's really no need to read it unless you just want extra content. I think that the anime by itself is very self-contained. It tells a full story from episode 1 to episode 12. There's nothing left to be desired, but the manga definitely has its own highs. I own the manga. It's very good, but I still think that even after reading it, that the peak of the series is the content of the anime. So yeah, Barakamon is the only show on my top 10 that's 12 episodes, and just that fact by itself speaks volumes when it's trying to compete against these multi-seasonal series. Okay, number 8, Oyasumi Punpun. Punpun is the only series on my top 10 that does not have an anime adaptation. So if you're only interested in anime, I guess you can go skip to number 7. But basically what Punpun is about is there's this boy who's depicted as a bird throughout the entire duration of the manga. Same goes for his family, and it's about his growth. Not really growth, but the change he experiences from a child to adulthood. So essentially it's a coming of age story, right? But it's definitely not in the traditional sense, because most coming of the age stories, right, there's this protagonist who either wants to be something or lacks something, and it's usually this one specific thing that they want to accomplish, or they find themselves having faults, and throughout the duration of the series they, you know, meet people, they do stuff, and then they overcome it, right, and they become a better person. That's usually how coming of the age stories go. Punpun is very different. It's not about one specific thing, it's more of how his environment changes him as a person, and it's a very abstract depiction, right? Even from the beginning, the main character is a bird. There's almost no series that has a main character as a bird, and even if you read like one volume, you can tell that the imagery on the manga is insane. Like, it's very, very creative, and it just invokes emotions that really cannot be expressed otherwise. And from the beginning, you're like kind of delving into the minds of Punpun, right? Him being a boy who, you know, wants to be all these things, right? He wants to be an astronaut, he likes a girl, he has friends, he's a very normal kid, and kids have wild imaginations. And Inio Asano, the author author does a very good job at depicting this wild life of Pan, right? In a more holistic sense, it's a very pessimistic and a grim take on life, but it's also very realistic and enough to invoke a lot of emotions in the readers. What I mean by that is a lot of times these seinen manga that tackle dark themes can feel incredibly forced and edgy. They just kill off random characters, they have these horrible things happening to the protagonist, and there's a lot of grief, but you don't really think it could happen in real life. It feels very fabricated. But Pan, very realistic. Like if someone were to ask me how it feels to be born into very unfortunate circumstances, where that be maybe it's abusive parents, maybe you have a disability, maybe you're living under poverty, right? There's a lot of things that could go wrong from birth, and obviously I have never experienced that, right? I was born in a fortunate household, right? But if someone were to ask me that, I think Pan is a series that perfectly outlines that experience from the very beginning and what it could result in, which is what Pan as a character is, right? And sometimes you wonder, like, how did that person turn out to be that way as an adult? Like, what kind of circumstances could they have possibly went through for them to be this like psychologically wounded? Pan, again, perfect example of how someone's environment and the people around them can really influence them and literally change a person from a boy full with aspirations and hope to someone that just does not want to live anymore. And what's even more interesting is that Pan as a character, so two important things. First of all, his name is a placeholder in Japanese, which means that it can literally mean anything. It's like blank blank, right? It can be your name, it can be my name, it can be anyone's name. And secondly, he's depicted as a bird, and there's a very deliberate choice for doing this. It means that he's not meant to be seen as a person. He's meant to be seen as a self-insert of what anyone could turn out to be like under the right circumstances. And by right circumstances, I mean terrible circumstances. And once you stop and think about it, it's very powerful, as in Pan could have easily been you or your friend or someone you love, right? Could have easily happened to anyone, and it really shows you the power of one's environment and how that can influence you, and how, I don't want to sound cliche, but your environment is the number one factor in shaping who you are, right? And secondly, it really gives genuine insight on what some people in the world are going through that you may have never fully known, right? You probably already know that people struggle around the world, right? You don't actually know how it happens, and that was basically the case for me until I read Pan. It was a very eye-opening experience and something that really made me think about life as a whole. So yeah, that was a very spoiler-free vague take on Pan. From here now on, I guess more spoilers, and I'll just go over a couple moments, not all of them, because that'd be impossible. That'd basically be every single double spread, for being honest, but I'll go into a few specific moments that I wanted to go over, and start with this one. So this is the first arc that I thought was really great, and the moment that I really started liking Pan. I think before this moment, it's a little bit slow. It's obviously meant to serve as an introduction to the series and Asano's storytelling method. It takes a little bit of time to get used to. Very wacky and crazy and like insane at times, but yeah, I think this happens in like volume 3 or 4 or something. But it's basically his uncle, and Pan isn't just a story about Pan. It's also about his family and his friends. And Pan's uncle really a very complex but also character that anyone can relate to. He almost plays a role of a father figure to Pan, unlike his actual father. And this scene of him staring at the water, just very melancholic and silent, but also very, I guess you can say, radiating, if that makes sense. And another thing I want to point out about the spread is just look at the art. I guess I should say that it's not one of his best looking panels, but that's mostly due to the ocean looking a little bit too realistic, because it is an actual photo taken. And Inio Asano uses this digital mix in his art where he takes a photo and then he draws his own illustrations on top of it. So this is basically a picture of the ocean and the clouds and the sky, and he drew a bridge and Pan's uncle on top of the bridge, right? But yeah, I would say that the top right portion of the panel looks a little bit too realistic and not like manga like, but I love the mix of digital art and like hand-drawn art that Asano does. It just looks very good on Pan. It would not look good on other series. It would feel, I think digital art is like sort of off topic here, but I think it's similar to CGI, where if it's used well, it can make the anime look like 100 times better. But then if it's used like not that well, it looks terrible. Same for digital art. If you copy paste the same thing over and over again, it looks like a photo book. But Pan, not only does Asano use it very well in conjunction with his normal art, but it also fits like Pan's abstract style a lot, right? And it also ties back to the self-insert point I mentioned. So next one, another very powerful moment. This is probably my top 3, if not my favorite moment from Pan. It's basically his mom telling Pan that they have this really troublesome relationship where they do not really like each other, and it's partially due to Pan's own personality, but it's also mostly due to, you know, Pun's failure as a mother to provide guidance. And it's not like the mother is a bad person, right? She's her own person. And again, Asano does a really good job making the readers relate to each character and their struggles. And, you know, the mom also wanted a happy life, things not turn out her way, and then she's on her deathbed, right? And then after all this hatred and this misunderstanding, she, right before she dies, she tells Pan that she loves him. And firstly, that's a testament to a mother's love for their kid, even after, you know, over a decade of pure hatred and like regret and guiltiness. You know, at the end, she really appreciates Pan being there, and she loves him, right? But what's even more striking to me is the panel that comes after this. If you read it, you know what I'm talking about. It's where Pan says, but even at the end, he did not love his mother. That's the part that really, I think, encapsulates Pan, like very realistic. Her mother loves him, but he does not love her back. And, you know, that really speaks volumes about Pan as a character and how much he's changed due to his corrupted environment. It's just such a booming moment, and it just really shows the twisted and the dark nature of the series. And it's not forced at all. It's completely realistic that Pan would not love his mother after all that's happened to him. But at the same time, you just feel this sadness and anguish for Pan. Just how much has he gone through to just not love his own mother at his birth. And it's very well depicted here. This is a very emotional and heartbreaking moment, and probably when I realized that Pan would be one of my favorite series that I've ever read. The next panel, not much to explain here. It's sort of the climax with you know, Aiko and Pan's relationship, and it's again a very stark contrast to what's going to happen next with Aiko's death and everything. But yeah, it's just a really happy moment. Like, I would definitely say this is the moment that Pan was happiest. And yeah, it's very beautiful, it's poetic. If only the series ended like this, Pan I guess would not have this terrible reputation as the most depressing manga of all time. But at the same time, if it did end like this, Pan would not be what it is as it is right now. So pretty self-explanatory why it's a good moment. So next one, the final one, is Sachi, who is one of my favorite characters in the series, you know, standing over Pan who's at near death after seeing Aiko kill herself. And it's like after 140 chapters of all this crazy shit happening to Pan and his friends and his family, this is the very climax. This is the result of everything he's done, and the ending is basically perfect in my eyes. I think the easy and the obvious way the author could have ended it is Pan kills himself. That would have been the easy way out. He does not do it. He keeps the character alive. And what's even more kind of crushing, I guess, is what he says at the end, where, you know, Aiko makes one last request to always remember her, and he agrees, right? And at the end, the almost one of the final words are, every year that goes by, I lose confidence in who you are. Aiko, the most important person to Pan, as time passes, she's no longer remembered, right? The very final panels are a parallel to the first chapter, and, you know, it just signifies the same exact dark cycle happening. My very genuine thoughts that I had when I finished this manga was, firstly, how can a human ever think this way, and how can they make a manga like Pan? Like, Pan is just purely genius. Inyo Asano is a genius and a master storyteller. It's sort of a similar feeling to what I said about Girls House Tour, but much more so, I would say. It's something that you can only understand by reading it yourself. There's this really negative connotation thrown around in the anime and manga community about Pan being the single most depressing manga in Earth, and everyone glorifies Pan to be this series that once you finish, you get like chronic depression. Like, I don't think that's true at all. Like, Pan is depressing by nature, but it's not like it made me depressed as a person, right? After I finished it, I was like, what a amazing story. Like, I can't believe someone wrote this. I wasn't like, oh, I want to kill myself now, right? That doesn't make any sense. Like, I appreciate good story. A lot of people appreciate good stories, you know, and that's just it, right? The only time I would actually be depressed is if like my favorite series ended, and then the fact that it ended and the fact that there are no more chapters or episodes, that would be the depressing part, not like what happened in the story, right? I mean, I don't know, that's just how I see it. So if you're scared by the, you know, sort of the common consensus on Pan that it's insanely depressing, like, it is a very mature story that handles, you know, death, depression, love, hate, corruption, violence, lust, and like what those emotions and feelings and experiences can have on a person. But if you want to expand your taste and try something new, but you're kind of scared because of all this, you know, glorified like depression dick riding train that Pan has, like, you know, just try for yourself. I think it's worth trying. I know plenty of people that, you know, kind of were turned away from that aspect but still ended up loving it. I also know people that started it and couldn't finish it because because of how dark it was. You could be one of those two people. I've never felt depressed while reading the series. I thought it was a very enlightening experience and gave me a new perspective on a lot of things that can be applied in real life. So obviously, if your favorite series are K-On! Or like Yuru Camp, and you only watch and enjoy series that are, very slice of life, wholesome, more on the comfortable side, and they're like just like primetime Iyashike series, I would not recommend it. But if you're more open and you want to explore the more of the darker and mature side of manga and just media in general, Pun Pun would be my number one go-to recommendation. So yeah, that was Oyasumi Pun Pun. Number 7, and before we get in, I think it's important to mention that from number 7 all the way to number 4, these series are nearly interchangeable. They're my absolute favorites, and these are the orderings that I'd give if I had to order them, and I'd have to evaluate way more holistically than I would usually do. So keep that in mind as we go on. But anyways, number 7 is going to be Chihayafuru. And much like Barakamon, I thought it would be another series that I wouldn't enjoy. It was super highly rated on my anime list, and it was talked about a lot on Reddit. I don't know, I thought it was just some like super hardcore traditional Japanese series that's like really heavy on like metaphors. And I looked at the cover and it looked like a girl throwing a bunch of like bamboo papers. So maybe I thought it'd be like, I knew it was a sports anime, so maybe I thought it'd be like some traditional game where you throw these cards, like you throw darts, and like, I don't know, I just thought it was like extremely stupid. But what Chihayafuru ended up becoming was my second favorite sports series of all time. And keep in mind that sports is my favorite genre, so that means like a lot to me. And to briefly explain what Chihayafuru is about, it's about this traditional Japanese card game called Karuta. So I actually was correct about the traditional game part. But how this works is there's these 100 poem cards, and there are these like playing cards that have poems written on them. And to very simply explain, there's a reader and 2 players, and the reader reads a poem, and for each poem it corresponds to a card, and your task as a player is to find that card and swipe it away from the playing field as fast as possible before your opponent. So it's a game of memorization, agility, and a lot of endurance. So I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, this is boring as fuck. I don't even know what the fuck this is. Karuta, what the fuck is that? Like, I know that's what I thought too. But if you like sports series and the kind of story structure they have, then you should know that you should not judge based on the premise of any series or the cover, because sports series have the potential to make anything amazing. Like whatever the sport is, it can literally be like curling, where it's like you rub the ice to move a ball or something. I don't really know how it works, but it doesn't matter what the sport is. The sport is only a medium or a method that the author uses to convey their messages. And this is a trend that I've noticed along many sports series, where they have some of the best characters in all of anime and manga, and some of the most intense and hype moments, despite being extremely grounded in reality. It's about all these different characters and their struggles, and how through Karuta they develop as a person, and they show this growth as a team. And it tackles a lot of mature themes. It's very hype. Like, you would not expect a freaking card game to be hype, but trust me, it's very hype. And so since Chihayafuru is a sports series, and it's basically impossible to talk really about sports series without, dropping spoilers and talking about certain matches and movements, right? So I will be going into plot details. If you have not watched or read the series, please don't watch this part. Just skip it. Just look at the screen and go to that timestamp. But I'll dedicate this, 10 minutes of time that I have stowed away for Chihayafuru to just talk about one character, and that character is Taichi. Taichi is like my top 5 characters of all time in any series, and he's probably my favorite non-main character of all time. The first Taichi moment that I want to talk about here is the very iconic moment from season 2, Mizusawa versus Fujisaki, who is one of the nationalist contenders, and Mizusawa needs 2 more wins to secure this victory, right? And it's Taichi and Nishida, and I love Nishida, but I cannot talk about him right now, or I'm gonna have no time. And it's those 2 versus 2 of the best Fujisaki players, right? And it's down to the luck of draw, meaning that whoever takes the next card wins the game. And it's extremely rare situation where it's double luck of draw, where both games depend on one call. And right before this intense moment, you just have Taichi going through this just inspiring monologue about how much he wants to win this game. And throughout the 2 of the previous seasons, you just see Taichi having extremely bad luck, and he's a really hard worker, right? He's like super smart and everything, but but luck is not on his side. He mentioned this throughout the match and just a lot just throughout the series. And he's an A-class level player, but because of his terrible luck, he's still stuck in B-class. And he knows this. He knows that he's unlucky, but he's kind of just like pleading to the Karuta gods to let him just have just this one match, because he knows how important it is to Chihaya and the team, right? Like Taichi doesn't like Karuta the same way that Chihaya likes Karuta. Like Taichi obviously likes Karuta to some extent to keep playing, but the main reason why he's devoting all this time and effort and willpower to Karuta, and especially this match, is solely due to his affection for Chihaya, right? Just the way his like sheer tenacity to win this game is presented in this panel and in the anime too. I actually watched the anime first, and I love the anime, but I'm just putting up the manga panel just because I don't want to make a gif out of it. But just amazing, and his wish to just win this game is so honest and so well presented. I could just feel it within every bone of my body. It was really dire and just a very endearing moment for Taichi. And the voice acting here is phenomenal by Mamoru Miyano. Does an amazing job voicing Taichi. And here, just today, just right now, all he wants, just this one card that he's been struggling so hard throughout the entire game to beat this like almost undefeatable opponent. And here's the epic moment. Gets the call that he wanted. Same for Nishida. They win the 2 games needed, and Mizusawa does win the nationals as a team. But throughout like the 45 volumes or however many volumes Chihayafuru has, and the 3 seasons it has, this is like by far my favorite standout moment. It just has my favorite character and just displays everything I love about him. He's an extremely nuanced character where I've never seen a character like him before. He doesn't really show his emotions on his outside, right? He's a very like stoic guy almost, but when he does really display these kind of traits and just his passion for getting something done, and the way it's presented throughout the series is just so amazing to watch. That's just all I can say about it. And of course, I have to mention Mizusawa's team spirit and everything. Like, I love how every time a team member wins, they shout like 1 win for Mizusawa, and that's like so wholesome, and you can just feel their energy as a team. But yeah, I just need to single out Taichi here because of how amazing it is. And even after this team match, he wins every single one of his individual matches and gets promoted to A class. And Shinobu even comments on this, that Taichi and I think Arata or someone were the only 2 people that did not lose a single time within the tournament. And that just, like, you know, all I can feel is happiness for Taichi and how hard he worked to get this, and him getting it finally is just so satisfying to watch. And season 3 too, he goes against really strong opponents that he would have definitely lost in the past, and he beats a lot of them. And just the most important thing that kind of sets Taichi apart from a lot of other characters is that his primary motivation is not for his love for Karuta. It's not like he came out being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be the Meijin. He's not like Arata. His motivation is very complex, and like seeing how his love for Chihaya factors into everything just makes him an incredibly nuanced character. And just watching him develop over these series is like one of the most interesting experiences that I've ever seen. But anyway, next moment and the final moment that I'll talk about in detail is Chihaya's rejection, or Taichi's confession to Chihaya. And this is definitely a very heartbreaking moment. So how this starts is, you know, they're just kind of in the room after all the tournaments, and Taichi has a moment, a flashback back to his childhood. And I know a lot of people kind of dislike Taichi in the beginning just because of his childhood and like how he was sort of bullied to Arata, but like honestly, personally, like I don't really care. He was a child, you know, children get jealous. It's no big deal. I think it's kind of weird to hate a character just because of like one thing they did as a child out of jealousy. But anyways, obviously to Taichi, this moment meant a lot for him, and he kind of recollects back and says like he's always wanting to become a person who's not a coward. And again, this is just him showing, I just got goosebumps, but this is just him showing his inner emotions, which he does not do often. And this is like one of the only times that Taichi ever mentions childhood memories, and it took a lot of courage for him to talk to Chihaya about this. And this moment just leads right up to arguably the climax, or the first climax of the series. Like, wow, this is my favorite confession moment of all time. Like, the art is amazing here, but the execution and everything, again, you can just feel Taichi's emotions through his expression and his voice acting. But the thing that makes this moment even better is when Chihaya basically doesn't know what to say and indirectly rejects him, right? And time passes and everything, and Chihaya is giving a speech promoting her club to a bunch of people, and then she just runs out because she realizes that she needs to talk to Taichi, and she catches up to him and says a bunch of stuff, and Taichi just looks at her and says, "Are you under the impression that I'm made out of stone or something?" Like, wow. Even for Taichi, who loves Chihaya so much, you know, this is a breaking point for him, right? And it's not like he says that to Chihaya out of hatred or something. Like, he says that all the Karuta cards right now to him are black. Very powerful imagery and a very dramatic moment. Chihayafuru season 3, especially the ending, is one of, if not the best drama I've ever seen. I usually hate drama, and especially melodrama. I think they're like overly complicated and like just can be resolved very easily, but they don't get resolved just because the author wants to drag out stuff. But this ending scene, very powerful, and you can just see how much impact Taichi has had on the club after he leaves, and just a lot of things just don't go well because of Taichi's absence. But yeah, in the manga, this leads to a lot of very amazing post season 3 Taichi development that I will not go into detail because of spoilers, and I know a lot of people are waiting for season 4. But yeah, I'll just keep repeating this. Taichi, an incredibly nuanced and complex character. He's just the kind of character that not very straightforward, but you just definitely want to root for him. If you're an Arata fan, you can go fuck yourself. Taichi over Arata any day. But anyways, Taichi is an amazing character. I just cannot emphasize enough. Oh, and another thing, Taichi's design is just fucking amazing. You know, I'm a straight male, but if you decide to go gay for Taichi, you know, I'm not gonna blame you or anything. Anyways, I'm gonna just do a little bit of anime versus manga comparison. I think they're both just amazing. Manga is very good and the anime is a 10 out of 10 adaptations. Honestly, it just depends on which medium you prefer. The only thing I will say that is Karuta is inherently understood better with sound because of the fact that the reader reads poems aloud, and the anime voice acting is beautiful and the poem just resonates through your ears, and just amazing sound design and everything. And it's kind of like if you're watching a music anime, would you rather read a music anime or watch a music anime and like be able to listen to the music? I mean, that's not like a totally fair comparison, but just being able to listen to it, and there's a lot of strategy involved that gets shown in Chihayafuru with how you kind of pick cards based on syllables, and you can like move them around based on like how good your hearing is and what kind of syllables that you're good at. And there's a whole like plot line based on that, and a lot of like tactic and strategical factors that go into Karuta. And I feel like the anime does a really good job demonstrating all those things, especially if you're not familiar with Japanese and you don't know like all the different consonants or whatever. Like, the anime does a really good job at doing that, and just easier for you to like understand the game and everything. So just for that aspect, I would say the anime might be slightly better. But yeah, the manga is phenomenal. Has my top 3 favorite art style, just extremely good art. But the anime also has really nice visuals. This is like peak Madhouse 2011, and later on season 2 2013, and even season 3, which is made in 2019. And I know a lot of people kind of describe like modern day Madhouse, but visuals look stunning. One of my favorite anime in terms of visuals, and has some of my favorite OSTs ever. But yeah, just to reiterate, Chihayafuru is a sports anime. If you're a sportsman, then I have no fucking idea why you have not watched it yet. So go watch it. If you're not a sportsman and you want to try out more sports, or if you just want to kind of like delve into the genre, I think Chihayafuru is a great start. It really makes you care for all the characters, and there's a lot of emotional moments and a lot of drama, a lot of hype and tension. Has everything that you want in a series. It's just amazing. And I'll also mention that Chihayafuru is the most underwatched series on my list, so I'd be happy as a fan if more people got to watch this series. But yeah, that was Chihayafuru. Alright, number 6, Gintama. Gintama in short is one of the most unique experiences that I had in the anime medium. At some point in the anime, whether that may be 15, 30, or 200 episodes, you begin to understand what the author Sorachi has built up and begin to appreciate his storytelling techniques. In short, Gintama is not complex. It's a comedy series detailing the everyday lives of Yorojia, a group consisting of a broke swordsman, an alien girl, and a regular dude. Largely episodic in nature, the episodes can be anything from getting a haircut to a space battle parodying Dragon Ball Super to an incredibly remote emotional story arc. And although these episodes may seem useless, and some do only end up serving as a pure comedic gag, the majority of them help the watchers get to know the dynamics, interests, and the backstories of these of the extremely big cast that Gintama has. Gintama is one of the only series that has a cast with over 10 characters that I genuinely like, while most series that I watch barely manage to have more than 1 or 2. But back to the main point, as you watch these characters' everyday lives, you slowly get invested in their actions and thoughts, even when the plot is literally slapstick gag. and most of the times essentially non-existent. These fun, lighthearted episodes transition extremely well to the later serious arcs, where the series has a complete 180 in atmosphere and tone, where the characters go up against a conflict, often leading to the best developments and the best standout moments in the series. That's a pretty vague overview of Gintama's general storytelling structure. Once again, it's extremely unique and may seem boring at first, but once you start to care about the characters, the humor as well as the emotional investment gets amplified 100 times more. Now, more on the spoiler side, I'll talk about 2 specific moments in the series, so skip this part if you haven't watched the series yet. Firstly, episode 189, otherwise known as the radio exercise episode. This was the only episodic episode in Gintama that made me tear up. Just seeing Kagura, who's, has monster strength and everything, but is still a kid at heart, and she's trying so hard to continue the radio exercises every morning for the sake of his dead friend. And one day the radio breaks because of rain, and Kagura is just sitting there on the ground crying. And while I was watching this, it was pretty sad, and partially knew that Gintoki would step in last second to help Kagura out, and he does. But the part that really made me emotional is seeing that the rest of the cast, Otae, Shinpachi, Zura, Sachan, and I think even Mada was there, all doing the exercise next to Kagura in the rain. And the whole time, Gintoki's voice is just resonating and as it recites the lines played by the radio exercise, and you just see a time lapse of the season changing. But the thing is that as time goes on, more people join with Kagura and they all do the exercise to honor her dead friend. And you just have this super emotional OST playing in the background, which is actually like my 3rd favorite OST of all time. And it just demonstrates this like unbreakable bond that Gintama characters have with each other, and how Sorachi was able to develop it so seamlessly and so flawlessly throughout the series. After watching the 188 episodes of Laughter, Sadness, and Goosebumps prior to this episode 189 just hit like a truck. Sorachi has a gift for executing dumb ideas to perfection, and in short, that's what Gintama is, right? A group of stupid characters doing stupid shit that brings a wide array of emotions to the watchers. Sorachi utilizes his quote-unquote formula perfectly, so much so that as a person that finds episodic series boring, I ended up loving Gintama. I went on a little tangent there on the end, but yeah, that's the one regular episode that I wanted to mention for Gintama. The second thing that I wanted to mention is my overall favorite episode of the series, and also the episode that made Gintama into my top 10. Episode 211 during the Kabukicho 4 Devas arc. This episode doesn't need much explanation. It's the first climax of the arc and arguably the biggest climax of the series up to that point, when Gintoki, upon seeing Otose lying dead on the ground, goes berserk and attacks Jirocho in the graveyard, only to get defeated in the end. So okay, couple main things that I want to talk about here. Firstly, and the most importantly, Otose's relationship with Gintoki. From the very first episode, they've known each other, they bicker, drink, and laugh with each other. And you always get this feeling that there's more to the relationship than what's shown. And although we don't get to see much of the backstory between the two, we get a glimpse of Gintoki's first meeting with Otose when Gintoki is on the verge of death and with no will to live. And this is such a stark contrast from the Gintoki that we've gotten to know and love, right? And Otose gives him a renewed purpose to live. And with having seen Gintoki's full backstories in the later arcs 100 plus episodes later, this moment becomes retroactively more significant. So I'm just going to quickly read a comment about the significance of the promise that Gintoki made with Otose that I have saved from years ago that I absolutely love, and it's a really good explanation on the whole thing. So here it goes. A kid is caught in the middle of the war he knew nothing about. He was alone. No one is there to protect him from the evil of the world. He learned to fight. He learned to fend for himself by scavenging the dead. And then, accompanied by a flock of crows, came a man. This man took the kid with him, fed him, cared for him, taught him the most important things in life. They traveled together. The man soon took other kids of unfortunate stature to teach them also. The kid found friends, 2 bloke idiots who was just like him in every way. The kid was happy. But blissful days never last long. The war reached its peak. The samurais were losing. The foes took control of their standard command, and the new regime looked at them and saw them as heretics. The school was burned down. The teacher was apprehended, but before he went, he made a request to the kid, a request to protect everyone else. Years passed, and the kid grew older. Men around his age would care about anything but war. Not him though. He fought a losing battle alongside his 2 bloke friends and a loud fellow they met along the way. They fought to get their teacher back. This episode happened. After making the most difficult decision of his life, he was alone again. He made 2 promises, but he failed to do both. Did his friends leave him, or did he leave them? I don't know. But he wandered astray and alone. He was captured and tortured. He met an executioner and he meant this man to end his life, but he saved him. He let him escape. Why can't he just die? With his wounds still fresh, he went straight to the graveyard. Then he met Otose, remembered a promise that he can still fulfill. A promise to protect everyone else. Right there, in the brink of death, he made another promise. So that's the end of the comment. That's like a perfect summary of why I love this moment. Or not just why I love this moment, but why this moment becomes retroactively better as you watch the later part of the series and Gintoki's full flashback, right? Throughout the episodes, we get to know Gintoki, but we don't really get to know him until later on, right? Sorachi unraveling Gintoki's past and the actual significance in a lot of his relationships that may initially seem for comedic purposes only is amazing. The perils and the symbolisms of Gintoki fighting Jirocho and how it all interconnects back to Otose and Gintoki's past is very well presented. That was pretty long, but moving on to my second point would be the bond Gintoki has with Yorozuya and the town of Kabukicho. I mentioned this in the radio exercise episode, but Gintama's greatest strength is being able to effectively utilize what the comedic episodes had built up and unleash them on these serious arcs. It's also one of the biggest reasons why a 5-episode arc, which is like relatively short, is able to effectively introduce conflicts and provide a conclusion without feeling rushed or lackluster. Third point, the fights themselves are amazing, great sword choreography, and one of the best things about Gintoki's fight with Jirocho in the graveyard is that despite the power up Gintoki gets from his rage, he still ends up losing, and that adds on even more to the emotional aspect. Sorachi could have easily just have Gintoki overpower Jirocho due to, power of friendship, anime rage, all that shit. That doesn't happen, and that just makes everything so much better. Later on, him teaming with Jirocho to be the last of the 4 Devas is very satisfying and provides another callback to the peril of Otose's backstory. Last but not least, the ending song that plays, Samurai Heart, is amazing. By far my favorite ending song of all of anime. Perfectly wraps up each episode, and you even get to understand the meaning of the visuals of the arc as the episodes go on. But yeah, the end of episode 211 and the 4 Devas arc are my favorite moment in anime in general and my favorite arc, respectively. I simultaneously had goosebumps and teared up while watching it, and it's something that I'll probably never be able to experience to that degree again in my life watching anime. And to me personally, Gintama never hit that peak again it had in the 4 Devas arc throughout the rest of the show. And it is one of the biggest reasons why I decided to place it relatively lower. Of course, the other arcs and moments are still fantastic, that goes without saying, but to me, and as Gintama spends over almost 400 episodes, it's impossible for me to talk about every single significant moment, but I hope at the very least that my explanation and commentary on that specific moment did it justice. So I want to just quickly address a couple of misconceptions that I see thrown around in the anime community about Gintama. So firstly, serious arcs are why Gintama is good, or insert some statement about watching just for the serious arcs. Oh yeah, that's not how it works at all. Serious arcs are only good due to the comedic episodes that lead up to it. Like for example, you can't watch Endgame without having watched the numerous Marvel movies beforehand, right? It's the same thing. Don't watch for the serious arcs, watch because you like the characters and you enjoy the comedy. Because that's 95% of the show, and if you don't like that part, then you're just gonna waste hundreds of hours trying to get some arbitrary moment that you may or may not even like. But once that's established and you're invested in the story, I promise the serious arcs later on will hit extremely hard. Secondly, referential comedy. It's pretty heavy in the beginning 30 episodes or so, but they slowly dwindle down. Gintama still references a lot of other popular anime and manga, but political references or cultural references, especially Japanese culture references, definitely reduce in quantity as time goes on. So if you're worried about that, just try to power through the beginning episodes. So thirdly, skip the first 2 episodes. They were made to promote the anime's adaptation for manga readers. They make no sense. They're literally fucking ass. They spoil character introductions. Just skip it. Those 2 episodes are the reasons why so many people, including myself, dropped the show early on. Because again, they make no sense. Fourth, and the most importantly, there's no specific point at which Gintama gets good. If you search up when does Gintama get good on Google, you will literally get 6 million results. The popular points are episode 30ish, 40ish, and 58, but in reality, it's different for everyone, right? I started enjoying it at episode 34, but that's me, not you. Just watch it, and if you like what you've seen, keep watching it because it gets a whole lot better. If you don't like what you've seen, drop it because it's not going to magically fit your taste and it's not going to magically get good at some arbitrary point. Lastly, the anime is vastly superior to the manga for the majority of the show. The voice acting by Sugita and Kogiyama are top notch, so unless you have a boner for manga medium, just watch the anime. So yeah, Gintama is definitely one of a kind, my second favorite comedy series and one of my favorite battle shonens. Give it a try because you're bound to watch it anyways at some point along your anime career. That was Gintama.